All right, cool. Well, I'll continue to take questions, but um I'm ready to cover something else if you guys want me to. Cool. All right. So I've actually kind of talked a little bit about it already on the call. And the whole idea is um, how do you master communication with people that you want to create a relationship with? Okay. Because the sales process is creating a relationship with a client, right? It's a relationship. I don't care how much time you have to do that. You have enough time to create a proper relationship with a client. And the most important thing in creating a relationship, and I think everyone can agree, is communication, right? Isn't communication one of the most important aspects of relationship building? Okay, so I'm going to give you three things, a model upon which you can um, think about communicating with your clients. Actually, you can use this with communicating with your spouse, your significant other, with your friends, with your family, people you care about. Okay, and what's really cool about this technique or this way of thinking, this model, is that it will always help you be better at communicating than worse. You'll be better because you follow this process, right? And here's the thing that I've learned a long time ago when I got in the Amway business is that if you just sell people that you get along with, that are like you, because people like people who are like them. So if you go to a party, you go to any gathering, there's probably going to be a certain percentage of people that you just hit it off the bat with, like you've known them forever. Like you ever run into somebody, you just start talking and talking, and you got a lot of the same backgrounds, and you're probably very similar in terms of visual, audio, kinesthetic, right? You talk each other's language, and it's like you've known them for years, right? And then there are other people that you just sit there and you kind of staring at each other. There's not much in common. They're like at a total vibrational level different than you. There's just nothing there. And I'm sure you've gone on dates like that, right? Where you thought it was going to be good, but there's just nothing in common, right? And the date ends pretty quickly. And so if you want to be wealthy in our business, you have to develop the skill of communication and being able to relate to everyone. Okay. Now, one thing about here's what's interesting about communication is that men communicate differently than women, like men to men versus women to women, right? There's something about men that the way that we communicate with each other is really different. And so they actually did a study. They did research on boys and girls, kids, like preschool age kids. And so they observed them and how they communicate to each other. And what they found was that boys, like in a classroom, for example, like in a classroom setting, boys sitting next to each other, they would just still face front, but they would turn their head and talk to their friend. They would just communicate like this, like everyone's together facing the front, but they're doing this, they're just talking like this, right? But they found what the girls did was they turned toward each other, squared up to each other just to, totally relate. It's a really interesting study. They say that there's probably some evolutionary aspect to it, where, men are out there hunting and, they can't be distracted and, and then the women are, it's just, anyway, the bottom line is that women and men communicate differently. And that's why maybe women can develop deeper relationships quicker with other women because of the way that they really relate to each other in that manner. So that's something kind of interesting when you look at how people communicate. Now, like I said, what's wonderful about communication is that this is a skill that you can learn. It's not really a talent per se. I maybe some people are extroverts, some people are introverts, but it's not a talent. It's actually a skill, which is great because it's something that you can learn to be good at, right? You can learn to get better at this. Okay. Now there's this uh, family psychologist named Carol Comfer who kind of created this model of how to relate, how families should relate to each other. And this is a great model for you to take to learn to um, relate to your clients. Okay. So it's called LOVE, L-U-V, love, not L-O-V-E, but it's love, L-U-V. And the L stands for listen. Okay. So what do we mean by listening? Listening such that you don't feel the need to respond. You know how when you're talking to someone or arguing, that the person's just waiting for their chance to respond to you, right? You know they're not listening to you. They're just waiting for you to shut up so they can get in what they want to communicate to you, right? And how often have you done that, where you're not really listening to what they're saying because they're wrong? There's nothing this guy's going to tell me that's going to change my mind. I'm just going to try to convince them that I'm right, right? So you know how that is. Well, don't be like that, right? Don't listen with any expectation to respond. Here's a tip. This has gotten me so much deeper in conversation with people. And it's like one of the best closing techniques is silence. So, and this is great. This is one of the coolest things. It's like when you're talking on the phone, like you ever have a friend and it's hard to get anything out of them. They don't respond quickly. And so you're on the phone talking to them. It's like, hey, Joe, how you doing? I'm doing good. So how's the wife? She's doing good. How are the kids? They're doing good. Right. And you're just trying to pull stuff out of them. And you feel like you have to fill the void. Well, my wife's doing great and the kids, and because you can't get anything out of them. Right. And so this is the whole idea of creating silence. So when someone's done speaking, count to 3 before responding. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Just pause. And here's what's really cool about pausing is that the person, before you hit 3 seconds, will start talking more. And typically they're going to go deeper into what they were talking about, even places where they weren't intending to go, just because they felt like they needed to fill the void of sound with their own conversation. And it is really a cool thing to watch because you're going to find out so many more things about them when you just let them talk, okay, without needing to respond. Let them continue on. And it's a cool technique when you let people kind of sing their song. People just want to be heard. And if you give them a chance to sing their song with you, number one, they're going to do 95% of the talking, and you're just going to be listening to them. And everything coming out of your mouth will just keep them going. And they're going to think you're the best conversationalist in the world. They're going to think so highly of you because you allowed them to sing their song. You allowed them to talk. So listen with no intent to respond. Listen with no judgment. Okay. Here's the problem that a lot of men have when you're talking to your spouse. You want to be Mr. Fix-It. She tells you, I am having so much trouble with this, blah, blah, blah. You say, well, here's why you're having problems, because you don't blah, blah, blah. So you try to fix them all the time. And they don't need you to tell them what to fix. And honestly, it doesn't matter if they're male or female. Don't feel like you need to respond with a fix in mind. People just need to vent. They need to air it out, right? And, people need to complain. And I think that's one of the biggest keys to communication is don't have judgment on people. Okay, don't try to fix them. Let them speak, right? Give them space to talk. Because what happens is people need someone that will listen to them without judgment, a safe environment. You know, sometimes when you know someone's judging you and what you're saying, what you're doing, like your parents, like you're trying to, speak to your dad about something, you know that if you screw up and tell him how you messed up, he's going to get on your case, right? You're measuring your words. If you can be that safe haven for people to say whatever they're feeling without regard to judgment, man, then you've created a more deeper friendship. I got to get better at that myself, right? So give people space to talk. So that's the whole idea about listening, is listening with no need to respond, listening without judgment, even though they might be wrong in your mind, even though they might be going down the wrong path, don't judge them and don't try to fix them. Okay. We'll talk about how to move them along the right path a little bit later, but anyway, so what does the U stand for? The U stands for understand. So you got listen, the U stands for understand. Now, the understanding part is giving the other person the impression that you are listening to them, right? Verbal and nonverbal. How do you like it when you're talking to someone and they're kind of staring at someone else? They're looking away. They're looking away. And they're looking at something going on there, but you're trying to have a conversation with you, right? They're going to think that you don't give a squat about them. You're going to give them kind of the worst feeling. One thing about that I've heard about, like some of the best politicians, I'm not saying, meaning politicians that have the skill of politics. They say that Bill Clinton was one of the best at making you feel like you're the only person in the room. So when you're talking to him, he totally focuses on you and he's listening to every word you're saying. And he's not like looking over here at Monica or looking over here at, sorry, that was bad. He's not looking, he's looking at you and focusing on you. And man, I've been so aware of that since the early days of trying to date women, right? Trying to date, focusing on the person that's right across from me. It's such an important thing. And I'm very self-aware when, when something tries to draw my attention. Like I'll have someone, I'm talking to you, and someone's trying to get my attention. I won't even look at them because I'm focused on you. I do my best to ignore them because they're interrupting my conversation, even though you're the one talking to me, right? The other thing too is you need to give feedback. Men are the worst at this. Again, sorry guys, getting on your case because you are. You have to nod. Yeah, you got to mirror and match. This is all the mirror matching thing. You're squared up to them. Yeah, have you ever gone into a restaurant and if you just look around like a romantic restaurant where a lot of couples go to get away from the kids or they're dating, and you look at the people that are having a great date, they're usually like leaning into each other. They're naturally mirroring and matching each other. But the couples that like one's kind of sitting like this over here and the person's looking over this way, not a lot of interaction. That date's not going good at all, right? So mirror and matching is an important thing. Nodding, oh wow, yeah, really? Man, like you guys know when you talk to me, I do that all the time, don't I? Whoa, seriously, dude? Like, John knows I do that all the time. That's how I talk. In fact, I had a second interview today with someone. He goes, man, I have to say, I really like you. I go, why do you like me? He goes, because you are like the only president of a company that says dude, and like you are just so chill. I was cracking up. I go, wow, that's a great compliment. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But show them that you're listening. You have to give reflect back to them that you are listening to them. Repeat words. People want to hear that you're listening to them. And then one of the best ways is, oh, really? So how did that make you feel? No, seriously? Was that serious? man, I can't believe that happened. Tell me more about that. Right. And it's not like you are sincerely continuing the conversation, getting them to talk more. How did that make you feel? That's insane. I mean, honestly, you guys hear me say that to you all the time because I really mean it, right? Reflect back that you understand what they're telling you. Repeat their words back to them. One of the best techniques of showing them that you understand and really showing them that you care about this conversation. You care about them and what they're saying to you. Okay. And then what does the V stand for? You could probably all say it. 1, 2, 3. Validate. Validate them. People want to feel validated that everything that they're saying is important to you, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. Here's the thing. It's empathy. We said it earlier, the empathy thing. Talking about Michelle Allman, right, John? Her ability to empathize. One of the most important traits when it comes to communication, because it allows you to validate the other person, because you can put yourself in their shoes. This is where this goes back to the non-judgmental thing. They could talk the craziest stuff. They could talk the most wrong thinking in the world, but put yourself in their shoes. If you grew up the way they grew up, if you had parents the way they had parents, if you were treated and abused that they were treated and abused, if you hung around the wrong crowd like they hung around, it's not too far-fetched for you to think that if you went through their life, you'd be doing exactly the same thing. I don't care what you think. No, I would have done, dude. The only reason why you say that is because you're talking from your perspective of how you grew up and what you've learned and all your experiences up to this point. Do you see how that judgment thing works? Right? Because you're judging from your perspective. You're not taking their perspective. And if you go further at trying to understand their perspective and why they think the way they think, it'll be so easy, it's so much easier to validate them and their experience and what they're trying to communicate to you without judgment. Does that make sense? And here's the other thing. People don't want to be fixed. People don't want you to tell them the answer to their problem unless they ask you. Like Hamza saying, hey, what should I have done with this situation? Now, if I were going to be a better communicator, I would probably say something like, well, after you're thinking about it, Hamza, how would you redo the situation? Let's replay the tape. Let's go backwards. What do you think you should have done that would help make it better? See, if I were a better coach, I need to improve. I would let Hamza discover what I just told him, right? Sometimes we try to be too hasty in coaching people instead of letting them discover. Here's the thing about letting them discover, especially your client, letting them discover that they need to take care of their loved one today, not down the road when they think they're going to die, right? You guide them with questions. Don't give them the answer. Let them discover the answer. Here's the power of letting them discover the answer. Number one, they're 10 times more likely to remember the answer because it came from them. And the thing about creating a new way of thinking is it creates new neural patterns in your head. Do you know that when you discover something that that you're going to do, or that an answer to a solution, you create neural patterns. And then when you repeat that same right decision making, there's myelin that wraps itself around those neural pathways to make that same decision again, the right decision. When it's coming from you, not from someone else, you're going to remember it more. And number two, you're going to follow through on it more. It's going to be your thing that you've discovered that you're going to do, right? And the other thing about prompting people to come up with the answer themselves is that they're going to think deeper about it. Here's the thing. This is something that I believe. I think, and I've said this before, that one of the best coaches is yourself. And there's this thing called, I call it the Holy Spirit, right? You got the Holy Spirit inside you. Other people call it the higher self. Far East people will call it your higher self that's in you, the better version that's already inside, that really knows what you ought to do. It's the wisdom that's already within you that you discover. I personally call it the Holy Spirit. And if you let them discover the answer, because they'll come up with it if you guide them enough down the path, then man, you've locked that in for that person. You've helped them figure it out. And I got to get way better at that, right? That's why I'm teaching this, because I'm teaching stuff that I need to get better at. So that's the whole idea of validating. So listen, understand, validate people. Okay. Now, if they need help, they need help. So what do? Well, here's the thing about helping them really discover, and I'll just use my children as an analogy. In my opinion, okay, how you parent is how you parent, but this is Ginny and my opinion about parenting, is that you can never take away, you don't want to take away pain from your children. You want them to go through the pain of heartbreak, the pain of failure, the pain of a breakup. You want them to go through the pain, okay? Because you want them to learn how to handle that pain so that they can handle it in the future. I never want to take away their opportunity to learn how to handle the inevitable pain in their life, the pain of loss, the pain of a breakup. No matter what I do, they're going to have to suffer through that. They're going to have to go through that pain, and they're going to have to figure out how to handle it, right? Now, pain is different than suffering. What you can do for someone is you can minimize the suffering, okay? So to help someone grow, to help your children grow, to help your agents grow, you help them grow by not taking away their pain, but helping them suffer less, right? Pain and suffering are two different things. Again, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. See, suffering comes from how you handle pain, right? Suffering anxiety because of something that hasn't happened yet, right? You're gonna endure pain, but suffering's optional. But pain can be the biggest teacher for you. And sometimes, honestly, in this business, pain can be the best teacher. Getting a charge back because of something stupid you did, you'll discover that you're never going to let that happen again. So many times where I've got no-showed because I didn't tie the appointment down, it's like I was so lackadaisical in tying it down. I promise you, I was going to minimize that, because there's a point where you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? I can't take away the pain of you not closing, but what I can do is coach you so you don't have to suffer it again, okay, long term, right? So there's a difference. So the whole idea of not judging people, right? So anyway. So to summarize, the bottom line, man, you got to listen, you got to understand people, and you got to validate people without judging them. You don't have to agree with them, but if you validate them and then ask them questions properly, you can guide them down the road of discovering the right answer for themselves. And to me, that's one of the best ways to help people, okay? The other thing too, when you start asking questions or when you start stating things to them or trying to get them to think about other ideas, don't use the word you. You should, you. Eliminate that word from your vocabulary. Begin things with I. Start telling stories about you. It's like, oh man, when I went through that with my mom, it was hard. This is how I reacted to that. I didn't react to it very well, but we ended up talking it out. And what's really crazy is she totally surprised me. I didn't know that she'd react the way she did. And it was because I gave her a chance to really, I always assumed that she would feel this other way. And it's like, man, is that crazy? I try to do that a lot. I. Don't go into you mode. You indicates arrogance, right? You don't want to tell people what to do. Tell them what other people have done in their same similar situation, or what you've done in a similar situation, how you were effective negatively. Like people learn more from your negative experiences than your positive experiences. Does that make sense? Like relate to them on how you made egregious error in your life, because what you're doing is you're being vulnerable to them. And then you're not making it sound like you're the know-it-all, be-it-all. Like seriously, if I can tell you all the crap I've done in my past, you're gonna say, oh my gosh, Alex. Yeah, I've learned from it all. And I've gotten a lot of help. The other thing about asking questions and communicating the I mode instead of the you mode is the tone of voice, a tone of respect. The biggest barriers to communication, we call this communication boulders, okay, is sarcasm. Sarcasm, terrible. I use it and it's terrible. Don't be sarcastic. I know I can get very sarcastic. Don't put people down. Don't use a crabby voice. Don't go into slash and burn where you're trying to be trying to get back at someone, you know, hostile criticism versus positive encouragement. Going into always or never. You know how people just go to the extreme. Man, it always or never, you know, blaming, going into the blame game, or getting to mind reading mode. You know, you're assuming. It's the assume, right? You're assuming all these things that aren't really true. You always have to question everything that you're assuming, especially when it comes to communication, right? Stonewalling people, where you just do not share how you really feel because you want to have the upper hand. You know, that's just more ego. Anyway, so there you go.